Okay, everybody, we are in a brand new project file, and I'm in the site plan. And the out of box, or I'm sorry, the Lantz-Boggio template has a view template applied that I'm just going to turn off for now. And so now I'm just in a site plan view, origin to origin project value, everything is all 000, and I am just project north right now. And what I'm going to do is create what's called a civil site conversion file. And I like to do this because when you bring in a civil file, a lot of times there is geometry way out in space. Maybe even the whole site is moved way really far from 0. So when you import it, it might be way out in space over here, and then you might get that error that pops up that says, you know, hey, your site, or you have elements that are more than 20 miles away from the origin point and stuff like that. So the civil site conversion file helps you kind of clean all that stuff up, including geometry that might be in the z-axis that's floating up in space. So I'm going to just insert a CAD file that I got from the Lantern Hill project, the recent Lantern Hill project, and I just renamed it 2020 Lantern Hill Civil Site Overall. And I'm just going to bring that in. I'm going to preserve the colors. I'm not going to correct lines slightly off axis because civil might actually have utility lines that aren't orthogonal to our project and stuff like that. So I'm not going to correct that. And I'm just going to bring it in at level 1, internal origin to origin. I'm going to open that. And it's going to bring that file in with true north up. Typically, most civil files are drawn and laid out with true north pointing up. Sometimes they rotate that or change the world coordinate system, but I would say 99% of the time, true north is up. So I've brought in the civil file, and here's what I'm talking about. I mean, you have this random stuff that's floating up here in space that you might not want in your Revit project file. So hence this civil conversion file. So now that I have that, I've unpinned this. I am going to move this site plan from the corner of my property line, which I just happen to know is this point right here from helping out that project team. And I'm going to move that to the 0 point of this civil site conversion file, just like that. And then once I do that, I will start cleaning this file up. So another reason why I like the civil site file conversion file is because, as you can see in the 3D view, there are elements that are just kind of floating up in space and different 3D elements kind of going up and down. And when you use that site conversion file and you export it to a file that you have in your project, it then gives you a nice flat file. And that was something that I learned from a couple of gentlemen from Perkins and Will at one of the AU sessions that they did at Autodesk. So yeah, to get rid of this floating 3D content, use the site conversion file to flatten it after you export. Typically when this file comes in, it comes in with potentially everything turned on. Sometimes it's not. It depends on the civil file if they have stuff turned off when you import it in the actual DWG file. But if everything's turned on like the civil site conversion view, it's, you know, this is your chance to kind of clean that up. And there's a couple ways you can do this. You can go into the visibility graphics, VV or VG, or if there's a view template applied, you'd have to go into the view template. And then you go to your import categories, and then you drop down the layers of all of the layers that are in that civil DWG file. And you start turning on and off everything that you don't want in there. So I'll typically come in and I'll turn off all the text that I know want to be off. The other way to do it is if you click on that civil file, you'll see that there's this query button up here at the top. And when you click on query, it allows you to essentially hover over geometry, click on that geometry, and then you get a pop-up that basically says, hey, this layer is such and such GNRL non-plot. And then you can hide in view. So once you click hide in view, you see that it turns off that line work. So then you kind of start coming through here and you start, selecting the objects or text or content that you might not want to be in your view, in your project. And you start cleaning that up. This can take a while. So to save some time, what I've done is I've already done this before I created this video, and I created a view template. I'm just going to apply that view template, and I'm going to say okay. And there's that property line that I was getting at, and with the potential change in color and whatnot. Now you take this and you want to crop it down. So what I typically do is I will crop it down to just the area of I want exported out, because that's what we're going to do next. We're going to take this, we're going to crop it down to this portion. I'm going to hide that, and then I'm just going to go File, Export, CAD Formats, DWG, and I am going to export this out as its own CAD file. And then that's the CAD file that I'm going to link into my actual projects. So I've already exported that CAD file. I'm going to go into the Lantern Hill 2.2 building, and I'm just in a architectural site plan, and I'm going to bring in that CAD file that I just exported from the civil site conversion. So I'm going to link CAD, and you'll see here's the Lantern Hill site plan link that I've created from the civil site conversion file. If you look in the picture, you'll see that my 000 is based off of that corner of the property. And now this is where I change this to black and white. I still leave correct line slightly off center, and I typically put this at the lowest level at that point. So let's go garage level 1, and then placed origin to origin, and I'm going to say okay. So as you can see, it brought that CAD file in to the 00 point of this particular project that has nothing established as yet. No true north, no shared coordinates or anything like that. I then take this file, and let's just go to, okay. The reason why I switched to this view is because I want to move this CAD file and line it up with my actual 2.2 building. And I am going to make sure that this guy is unpinned here. And I am going to move this guy corner of the building. So here's the footprint of 2.2 based off of what Civil has in the DWG that they sent us. It may or may not be accurate at this point, but I know that this corner of my building, and you have to know a corner or some sort of footprint geometry that you can align up with your actual up-to-date CAD file or project file. I know that this corner on 2.2 in this scenario hasn't changed, and I'm going to move it to the outside face of my finish, and that's what I have here. So now we also need to figure out what the angle of rotation is. And I'm just going to switch this to, take off this template. Quick. I'm just going to switch this to a wireframe really quick so I can see the geom line work of my CAD file underneath. And all I'm going to do is just do an angular dimension from the face of my CAD file to the face of my finish to get this angle here that tells me what the angle of rotation from true north to our project north, and that's 37.53. We need to remember that number because that's the number we're going to rotate our project survey, or not project survey point, our project base point angle to true north. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the CAD file 37.53, and it should line up with our site and our building footprint, if, once again, Civil has the most up-to-date actual footprint of your building. So the other thing I wanted to show you was, after we imported this DWG from the site conversion, and if you remember, this site conversion had 3D content that was floating all up and down, and I said that once we exported it, it would flatten it. So in the architectural site plan, and here's 2.2, if I go to the 3D view of that, you'll see that that DWG has been flattened, nice and flat, and we don't have geometry that's just floating up in space or out 20 miles away because it's been cropped. And that's a huge reason why I like to use that site conversion technique. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the architectural site plan. I still have our project base point and everything, kind of the corner of the building that was established in this project file. I've rotated the CAD file, the 37.53. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to get my project base point. I'm going to click on it, and you can see that there's this angle to true north. And if you click in there, you can actually now type in that 37.53 to rotate angle to true north. But because we rotated clockwise 37.53, we need to do a negative 37.53 and establish that angle to true north. Now, as you can see, it immediately rotated my site because this particular architectural site plan view is oriented to true north. So I go back to my level 3, I'm still project north, everything's orthogonal the way we want it on our sheets. But then when I go to my architectural site plan, I have it at true north. I like to keep my architectural site plan at true north. That way when I go to that sheet, everything is true north is up. But there are some project managers that like to rotate to get the building to fit on the sheet and a scale that they like, and that's fine as well. You just have to be conscious of what's really going on in your architectural site plan. Okay, so let's do a real quick recap. We have created a civil site file, conversion file, that we imported our civil, and then we exported to get this flat site plan file that we're linking into our model. When we imported or placed that civil file in the civil site conversion file, we placed it down at the corner of our property lines down here. Then we imported it into our 2.2 building. We established our angle to true north, and we rotated, and then we created our project base point. We updated it to be negative, whatever distance that we had to rotate. I think it was 37.53 or 32.53. I have already forgotten. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create shared coordinates so that all of our other buildings in here can be shared back either to this site plan or back to 2.2, and they're all in line with each other. And this can also help us with structural engineer and MEP engineer and establishing shared coordinates with those buildings and those consultants as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to manage. I'm going to go to my coordinates, and I'm going to acquire coordinates. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to select this CAD file. And what it's going to do is it's going to move my survey point to a 0, 0 point from the CAD file, which is that corner of the property line. And that's where I want it. So I'm selecting it. It says coordinates acquired from LH site plan link.dwg. I'm going to say close. And you'll notice that the survey point is now down here at the corner of my property line, right where I wanted it. Cancel. Line. There we go. Okay. So let's go ahead and save this file, and we're going to synchronize. Let's open up another building file, or actually let's import one of these other buildings and then publish coordinates to it. Okay, so I'm going to link in, I think this is 1.6. I may be wrong, but let's go ahead and just try to link that in. Let's go link Revit. And I've created this massing file, which is just kind of a mass of the building because I didn't want to use the actual files that that the project team was using. So I'm going to link in this massing file, and I'm going to link it into internal origin to internal origin. And it should bring its origin point to this origin point because that's the internal origin. And then I'm going to move that building and rotate it where it needs to go. So let's say open that, and I stuck it on the CAD link workset, which is wrong. I should have checked my worksets prior to that. I don't want the nested properties, but there you go. You see that there's the building. It happens to be orthogonal with 2.2, it appears to be here. So let's go to that first level working view that we had, the massing of 1.6, and let's move him. Let's undo my, there we go. Let's move him to a point where I think he needs to go. We'll go for the corner there. Come on, there we go. Okay, so let's go back to our architectural site. We have established where we want 1.6 to be. Let's check it out in 3D view. There's 1.6. Everything's looking great where we want it, and its relationship to 2.2 in space and time. What I'm going to do now is I am going to go to Manage, Coordinates, Publish Coordinates, and I am going to select the link project to which to publish shared coordinates system. So I'm going to hover over 1.6, and I'm going to click on it. It's going to ask me the internal coordinates of 1.6 is what we're going to use, and we're just going to say OK. All right. Now, when I synchronize this, it should ask me, hey, you have changed the current position of Lantern Hill 1.6 massing. What do you want to do? And you can do nothing. You can disable shared positioning, or you can save the new position back to that link. Now, this is where it gets important to understand that if you go start moving the shared coordinates of a project that maybe is already done or something, you could be messing up those shared coordinates that were established with that project. So my advice is if this is an existing building that we've already done, maybe do a save as and save it to your current project, and then link that building into where you need to into this project, and then establish those shared coordinates. Otherwise, you could be messing up shared coordinates that have been established on a project. So in our case, it's this massing, and we're going to go ahead and save back to that. Okay, so let's test it out. So let's open up the 1.6 massing, and this model is linked into here. So yeah, it's going to unload it. I understand that. And what I want to do is go to the site plan of this guy. And I'm going to just, for purposes of this, we're just going to delete our scope boxes because we don't need them. But you'll notice the survey point is way over here in space because it saved back to this file the survey point that we established in the other 2.2 model. But to test this, let's go ahead and link in the CAD file, the site plan. But instead of internal origin, let's go by shared coordinates. And everything else we're going to keep the same. We're going to say OK. And you'll notice that the corner of our property line and that survey point is where we have the the shared coordinates saved back to this file. So it's working so far. All right, so we've jumped into 2.1, and 2.1 is going to be placed right here. But what we're going to do is, since we have everything working so far, we're going to do the same thing that we did to 2.2. We're going to bring in the site plan and we're going to establish everything, and then that way we're going to truly test to see if the shared coordinates are all in line with each other. So we're going to go insert, link CAD, we're going to link the site plan, we're going to go origin, everything looks good. It's going to put the corner of the property line right here. We are going to move this guy, and let's go, let's see here. We'll go corner there, do right corner of our building here. And it's pinned, so you have to unpin. Make sure you unpin your CAD file. Don't worry, you will do that 1,000 times in your career, because I've done it 3,000 times already, and I never learned. All right, so we're going to move that. All right, so because this angle of rotation to true north is different from 2.2, we need to do the same thing. We need to basically draw a line, you know, from there to there, and then do an angular dimension. And I'm going to guess 23.01. Yeah, 23.01. All right, so 23.01 is the number that we have to rotate, and the number that we have to remember for rotating about true north. 23.01. Okay, so we have 2.1 angled and positioned correctly. We're in a site plan that, I'm going to turn off the view template here, and I'm going to change this to true north. And what we're going to do is, now we're going to say manage coordinates, acquire coordinates from our CAD file, and it's going to rotate us 23.01 back, and it's going to move our survey point to the corner of the property line. And we are now going to save the 2.1 file. And this is a massing file that I did like the 1.6. So we're saving that. We're going to go ahead and close this. We're going to go into the architectural site plan of 2.2. And now we're going to try to link in that 2.1 massing file by shared coordinates. And we're going to say open. And hopefully it puts it right in the spot where it's supposed to be linked. So we have 1.6 in the right spot, we have 2.1 in the right spot, and then 2.2 is where we started. So let's go back to our 3D view, and you'll see we have all the buildings where they're supposed to be. And that's how shared coordinates and taking advantage of a civil site conversion file is supposed to work. Thank you.